You go to the movies and you expected a certain type of movie, and in the end, it was completely different. It's something that you completely despise, such as like a horror movie, and you expected a comedy. What do? Well, in this video, we're going to look at what many people do and how that's a fallacy in some sort. So in economics, microeconomics covers a lot about how rational people would behave. And there's this concept called the sunk cost, which is when you put money in a certain project and in the end you realize that it's not making any money, you should disregard the money that you've already spent and just look from this period now into the future and decide what is the best financial decision for you to make. Disregard poor decisions in the past. You opened up a shop that should never have been open in this area. There's no chance of its success. Disregard that poor decision. Move forward and try to see what's the best way to either minimize your losses and to move forward and to have the best possible future. That would be Economics 102, Principles of Microeconomics, kind of illustrating a very rational person. But this concept of sunk costs, from a behavioral standpoint, by observing how people actually act, we've noticed that there's a fallacy, which is a situation where people don't really behave like they should. So that idea that you go to see a movie and you realize as you're watching it that it's a terrible movie, there's no way it's going to turn around and it's actually going to be a good movie. You've made a mistake. You should walk out and redeem the time that's left of that movie to something more productive, something that you'll actually enjoy more. However, a lot of people decide to stay and sit there and keep on watching the movie because they've put money towards the movie. They want to get their money's worth. So a lot of people will talk to you about getting your money's worth. Let's say you buy too much food at the restaurant and you realize that you could be wasting a lot, or you bought an extra glass of wine or anything else and you're not that thirsty, but you end up just drinking it all before leaving because you can't bear the idea of letting some of that go to waste. It's the same kind of idea. Even though that extra amount of liquid or food doesn't give you much value, it actually lowers your value because you're overly full or you're feeling more tipsy than you wanted. You'll still often consume it because you don't want to lose out. You put money into it. You don't want to not get your full money's worth. Other examples of the sunk cost fallacy that I personally find super interesting is the idea of, I had a friend of mine that had a condo in Calgary, and the economic downturn came around, the price of oil plummeted, and real estate in Calgary fell. And when that happened, he had just moved and he was in the market for selling his house. And in this process, he bought it for a certain price. Now the price had fallen. He didn't want to sell at a loss. So he ended up waiting for the house to kind of go back to a similar value than what he paid for, and then sold it at that price, and he was happy with that. But the thing that you have to remember is that in that specific situation, if the price is just creeping back up very slowly at a few percentage per year, whereas if he could have taken that money out and bought something else in another market that creates a lot more value, that was a poor decision. It's like keeping a certain amount of money in a stock that has lost value and not selling it to buy another stock that has huge growth potential just because you can't bear the idea of losing money. So those are all situations of the sunk cost fallacy. You've made poor decisions and you're kind of sticking to it for a certain amount of time that is longer than you should, which is you're chasing this kind of bad money with good money. You're going after trying to make money with something that's just a terrible decision. So the idea of wanting to pursue something that is not meant to work is a bad decision. And that is one that a lot of people take, which is called the sunk cost fallacy. So there's many reasons why we should give up a project if it just doesn't make any more sense financially to keep going forward. There is one reason, though, that some people may behave in a way that seems irrational with respect to the sunk cost fallacy, but they justify it in a certain way. And that reason is for signaling. If you believe that by keeping on going with the project and completing it, you actually offer the signal that you're not just someone who gives up, or you're not someone who likes to have losses on a house, and you're someone that wants to complete something and you just want to offer that signal, well, even if it doesn't make any financial sense, the signal can justify your actions. There just has to be a signal that's worthy of it. You don't want to keep on chasing good money with bad money and losing money in the process if there's not really much people paying attention to what's going on in the case of selling a house, and that it doesn't make any financial sense, that you're going to end up with a much better situation in the future if you sell it off and you buy something else and you end up making more money and you become more rich in the future or in a better financial situation. But signaling can explain why some people stay in business a little longer just because they don't want to be seen as a failure, someone who gives up rapidly, and other things of that nature. So it's just something to keep in mind within the realm of the sunk cost fallacy. So try to think about different examples of this sunk cost fallacy in your own life. And also, linked to another video that we'll see in this class, is the idea of how do you think about organizing a certain event, whether you should organize it for free for different individuals or whether you should have a very small cost associated to it. Try to think about that, whatever event it could be, like a webinar that's offered to the Avalanche community or anyone else. And all of a sudden you either do it for free or it might be like a $5 fee, which is pretty nominal for such a great service. And try to think about what will actually happen with people actually showing up, whether it's free or whether there's a certain cost associated to it. So think about the sunk cost fallacy, how it makes people do things that are not necessarily right, which could be that you've bought a ticket to a certain show, there's a snowstorm, but because you've invested into going to see that show, you've braved this snowstorm. Well, that's kind of a bad behavior that can happen. So if you're offering a service, how could you kind of think about this mindset that people have of trying to, once again, another example is you get injured doing a sport, but you've kind of got a membership for, I don't know, like a season's pass skiing or a membership to a tennis gym, and you keep on playing despite your injury just because you want to kind of get your money's worth. So try to think about that and try to think about how you could use this whole concept to your advantage in different businesses and so on. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you on the next one. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing or joining my class where I guide you to apply and expand on the information found in these videos to real life examples. Have a good day.